In Part 4 of Lecture 9, we will discuss operating systems. As we saw earlier, an operating system serves as an intermediary between the user or his or her applications on one hand and the computer's hardware on the other hand. Although much of what the operating system does is invisible to the user, one part in particular that is visible defines the user's characterization of the operating system, namely, its user interface. This will include much of the experience of using the computer. It defines how the user interacts with the keyboard, mouse, microphone, and touchscreen. Taking advantage of any combination of these input devices, the operating system collects the command or commands that the user wishes to execute. Desktop operating systems are designed for both desktop and laptop computers. There are a few in use, but it's most likely that your computer is running Microsoft Windows. If you happen to be a Mac user, you are most likely running the macOS operating system. If by some chance you are using a Chromebook, you are using Google's Chrome OS operating system. Operating systems control, directly or indirectly, the hardware of the computer and makes it available to the user. Its key features include accommodating one user at a time. Most desktop computers are intended for only one user at a time, but allows for multiple accounts. This allows each user to maintain some privacy regarding their files, and to customize their look and feel of the operating system without compromising the look and feel that other users experience. It provides networking capabilities, which are far more important now than when the PC first came out. It includes valuable file management tools. It allows the user to run more than one application at a time, and most importantly, provides the user with a graphical user interface which makes it much easier to use a computer. Tablet computers, smartphones, and e-book readers have hardware and requirements that are quite different from desktops and laptops. The operating systems that they use are called mobile operating systems. Examples of these include iOS for iPhone and iPad, and Android, which runs on a variety of tablets and smartphones. A computer that is in normal everyday use on your desk is going to have a version of the operating system that is different from that on a web server. Web servers do only two things: accept web page requests and transmit the requested page. While the same operating system's design will work for both, the particulars are a little different. Popular operating systems include Linux, UNIX, Windows Server, and macOS. You have probably noticed that it takes a few minutes for your computer to start up when you turn it on. That's because it needs to complete the boot process, which occurs in a couple of steps. First, the computer checks and makes sure how much memory it has, that its various drives and input-output devices are connected and working. It then reads in the operating system and does whatever initialization that it needs to do. Two terms become very important. The first is the kernel, which is the core of the operating system, the portion that you must have in memory so it can handle whatever help the computer needs to get things done. The second is a resource, which refers to any component that the computer and operating system requires to function correctly. The reason that computers can do so many things at once is because processes are managed by the operating system, which uses multitasking, multithreading, and multiprocessing. These three terms are related, but they mean different things. Multitasking means that the computer can do more than one thing at a time, except it's not doing it at exactly the same time. The computer switches back and forth between the different things going on quickly enough that it creates the illusion that they are being done simultaneously. The term process means something very specific in computer science. It is the act of running a program. So if I am running Word, Excel, and checking email, that's three separate processes. If the computer can run more than one of these at the same time, it is multiprocessing. A thread is the smallest sequence of instructions that can act independently. When you use Word to open documents or print documents while you go on writing, you have set up different threads to work at the same time. The different tabs in a browser are each separate threads. An operating system that can handle more than one thread working at the same time is multithreading. Let's take a look at some of the popular operating systems currently on our devices. Microsoft Windows is hugely popular, installed on 80% of personal computers. The early versions were only graphical user interfaces and were not operating systems in any meaningful way. Version 3 incorporated many operating system features, including the ability of computers to multitask. The name comes from the rectangular work area that is displayed on the screen. Windows grew out of the original operating system for PCs, called MS-DOS, short for Microsoft Disk Operating System. It was designed specifically to run on desktop computers using Intel's microprocessors. In recent years, there have been several different versions in use, including versions 7 and 8. The current version is version 10, with a look and feel like a tablet, even when working on PCs. The Macintosh computer was developed to be far more user-friendly than the PCs were at the time. The use of icons, a mouse, and the whole idea of pointing and clicking has been an integral part of the design since the Mac first came out in 1984. The illustration shows a few features of the Mac that are still worth pointing at, even for PC users. There is an Apple logo in the upper left corner of the screen. That opens the main menu, where the user can point and click at a choice. There are icons on the screen representing folders and files that the user may wish to access. On the bottom, you can see the icons for the various programs on the computer. macOS has always had a reputation for being easy to use, reliable, and secure. As a matter of fact, it is less susceptible to the problems you run into on PCs, including viruses. The kernel of macOS is currently based on Linux, which has strong memory protection, as well as fewer issues that require patches the way Windows does. Everything about the Mac shows it was built around the idea of multitasking and a graphical user interface. Apple later developed first the iPhone and then the iPad. Both were revolutionary devices, changing how we look at the digital revolution. And none of this would have happened without iOS, which was originally developed for the iPhone. iOS was based in part on the Linux code that was part of macOS. The home screen shows a collection of app icons. iOS was the first operating system to use gesture input, such as pinching and stretching with your fingers to change the size of something on your screen. As good as iOS is, there are some limitations. You can only install apps available on the online Apple App Store. The only alternative is a jailbreak, which means making changes in the system's software. This is not for the casual user, nor the faint of heart. You can run background processes, such as music, voice calls, notifications, but there is very little multitasking available beyond that. Google developed Android, and it is a popular platform for tablets, smartphones, and e-book readers. The home button is not a physical button as on the iPhone and iPad, but it is a virtual button on the touch screen. Android also supports voice input for Google searching, voice dialing, navigation, and other apps.